This is the key to the worksheet on topic 1. And this is the first equation. So we have this linear equation, and in this linear equation you will notice you have parentheses. And so the first thing you want to do is to remove these parentheses. So we're going to use the distributive property. So you're going to multiply every term that's inside this parentheses by -2. And you're going to multiply every term inside this parentheses by 4. So that's going to be the first step you're going to do. And so when I do that, I get -2 times 3x is a -6x. A -2 times a -6 is a +12. And then we have this term where I'm adding 5. And that's going to equal, and over here we have 4 times x is 4x. And then 4 times a +2 is a +8. And then let's just rewrite all these other terms. Okay, so the first step was to use the distributive property. Now notice that on both sides there are like terms. So we can, at this point, go ahead and combine like terms. So if you notice that 12, a +12 and a +5, those are constants, so I can combine those. And so I get -6x, and then 12 and 5 is 17, equal. And over here, you have 4x and you have a -x that I can combine. Those are like terms. So 4x subtract x, or 4x plus a -x, is 3x. And then the constants, 8 plus 3, that's going to be 11. All right, so that's where I'm at. So notice that when solving linear equations, you want to bring all the variables to one side, all the constants to the other. And so I'm just going to go ahead and bring the variables to the left and the constants to the right. And so we're going to use properties of addition to do that, properties of equality to do that. So if I want to bring this term 3x to the other side, adding, and remember what you do to one side, you do to the other, adding 3x is not going to help me because 3x plus 3x is 6x. So I really need to subtract 3x. So subtract 3x on both sides. Notice I'm aligning my like terms, and then let's combine them. So a -6x and a -3x is a -9x plus 17 equal, this is now 0. That's what you wanted there. So you wanted this x term gone from this side. And you have 0 plus 11 is 11. All right, now I'm going to bring the constant to the other side. So right now I'm adding 17. The opposite is to subtract 17. So what you do to one side, you do to the other. So notice one side, one side. I subtracted 3x on both sides, and you see it here. Now let's combine like terms. So +17 and -17 is 0. A -9x and 0 is a -9x is equal to, and then when I combine these two constants, 11 and a -17 is a -6. And then remember, you got to get the variable by itself. So at this point, since I'm multiplying the variable x by -9, the coefficient is -9. I'm going to divide both sides by the coefficient, so -9. And then remember, -9 divided by -9 is 1. 1 times x is x, and that's what you want. You want to get the variable x by itself. Equals, now over here you have to remember that a negative divided by negative is a positive, and then you can reduce 6/9, and you must reduce 6/9. So they're both divisible by 3, so you get x to be 2/3. And so that's the solution. That's a process you're going to go through for number 1. Okay, number 2. Number 2, you have this equation. So this is a linear equation. Again, notice you have parentheses on both sides. So let's go ahead and use the distributive property. So in this case here, every term that's inside this parentheses I will multiply by 3, because that's how you read this, 3 times this polynomial. And over here, though, see how I'm subtracting this polynomial, these terms that's inside this parentheses? You can think of it as adding the opposite, or if you want to, you can go ahead at this point and rewrite this as a 1 in front of this parentheses there, just like you had a 3 here, and over here you have a +3 as well. So in this case, you could distribute a -1, and that's what many students will do. If they don't see a number there, they will go ahead and put a 1. And over here, you can distribute the 3. Okay, don't say 2 plus 3 is 5 and distribute a 5. Thinking that's not correct there. Remember, you got to do multiplication before you do addition. Okay, so I'm going to use the distributive property 3 times in my first step. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 4 is 12. A -1 times 2x is a -2x. A -1 times a +3 is a -3. equals over here 2, and then let's distribute the 3. 3 times 2x is 6x, and then 3 times a negative 1 is a negative 3. All right, so first thing you needed to do was to get rid of the parentheses, and I did that by using a distributive property. The next step is to combine like terms. So let's look at the left side. So I have 3x and I have a negative 2x. Those are like terms. So 3x subtract 2x, or you can think of it as 3x plus a negative 2x is just x. My constants, I have 12 and a negative 3. 12 and a negative 3 is a positive 9. So on this side, when I combine my like terms, I end up with x plus 9 equal. Now let's look at this side. The only like terms on this side are your constants, a 2 and a negative 3. And I'm going to go ahead and put the variable term first. So I'm going to do 6x, and then 2 and a negative 3 is a negative 1. So now remember, to solve a linear equation, let's bring all the variables to one side, constants to the other. So I'm going to just go ahead and bring the variables to the left. So I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. See, adding 6x is not going to help because 6x plus 6x is 12x. So you got to subtract 6x. And notice, align your like terms. It helps. Now, once you subtract 6x from both sides, the next step is to combine like terms. So 1x and a negative 6x is a negative 5x. I get negative 5x plus 9 equal, this is 0 when I combine them, and 0 and a negative 1 is a negative 1. And the next step is to, right now I'm adding 9. The opposite is to subtract 9 from both sides. And so when I combine like terms, this is 0. 9 and negative 9 is 0. A negative 5x plus 0 is negative 5x equal a negative 1 and a negative 9 is a negative 10. And then to get the variable x by itself, right now I'm multiplying by negative 5, which means a coefficient is negative 5. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5. And so when I do that, negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. 1 times x is x, and that's what you wanted on the left side. So you get x equal, and you have to know that a negative divided by negative is a positive, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. And so there's your solution. All right, so that was number 2. Okay, so number 3, notice that this time I have fractions in the denominator. I have fractions in this equation. And so my denominators are these whole numbers, 3, 4, and 6. So the way you want to do this, and the quickest way, the most efficient way to do this, is to multiply both sides by the LCD. And so what's the smallest number that 3, 4, and 6 will go into? So that's the question you need to ask. The smallest number that 3, 4, and 6 will divide into. And so if you look at this, it looks like the least common denominator is 12. And so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to multiply both sides by 12. So notice though, on this side there are 2 terms. So remember, every term has to be multiplied by 12. This, and this. So technically, the next step you should do is say, well, I'm going to multiply both sides by 12. So you're going to say 12 times x minus 2 divided by 3 plus 1/4 equals, and then over here, 12 times 2x plus 1 divided by 6. And notice I did use brackets or parentheses here because this side had more than one term. This side only has one term, this right here, this fraction. And so I did not put that in parentheses. Now the next thing you're going to do is distributive property. So you're going to say 12 times this and 12 times this fraction. So you're going to say 12 times x minus 2 divided by 3 plus 12 times 1/4 equals, and then 12 times 2x plus 1 divided by 6. All right, so that's where we're at. Now the next thing is, remember, the whole point of multiplying by the LCD is to clear those fractions. So you want the denominators to be a factor of 1. Every denominator needs to be a factor of 1. And if you're doing this correctly, it should be, because watch, 3 divided by 3 is 1. 12 divided by 3 is 4. This is a 6. I'm sorry, this is a 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Okay? And notice all these denominators are now factors of 1. Okay, now the next thing you got to be careful about is this. You have 4 times this binomial. So let's put that in parentheses. 4 times x minus 2 plus, and then over here I can just go ahead and say 3 times 1 is 3, equal, and let's do the same thing here, 2 times this numerator, which is more than one term. It's a binomial. So 2 times 2x plus 1. All right, now let's go ahead and use the distributive property in both cases. So I get 4 times x is 4x, 4 times negative 2 is a negative 8, plus 3, equal 2 times 2x is 4x, and then 2 times 1 is 2. Now, on the left side, I can combine like terms. There aren't any like terms on the right side, but there are on the left. So a negative 8, your constants, a negative 8 and a positive 3 is a negative 5. So this left side becomes 4x minus 5 equal 4x plus 2. Okay, now, what happens here is this. And I did not mean for this problem to do this, but it did. So we have to deal with what I originally gave you. So if I subtract 4x from both sides, I want you to notice something. When I combine like terms, this is 0 and this is 0, so the variables disappear. And what you have left is negative 5 equals 2. Now remember, the variables disappear, so when negative 5 equals 2, that's a false statement. The statement is not true. Okay, the statement is not true. So what that means is that if you look at your original problem, the solution to the original problem, there aren't any, since that's a false statement right here, there aren't any real numbers that will make this equation a true statement. So you just say this, you just say no solution. Okay, so no solution. So that's the, so here's your work. You get this statement here where the variables disappear and you end up with a false statement, so you just say no solution. All right? Okay, let's look at number 4. Number 4, we have this in number 4. Okay, so again, I have fractions in my linear equation. I have 3, 8, and 6, and the least common denominator, the smallest denominator, the smallest common multiple of 3, 8, and 6 is going to be 24. So just like in the previous problem, you're going to multiply each of these terms, each of these fractions, by 24. So you're going to say 24 times the left side, just like this. And again, I'm putting that in brackets is because there are two terms on this side. On this side, there's just one, so I'm not going to put that in parentheses or brackets. I'm just going to say 24 times x divided by 6. So remember, what you do to one side, you have to do the other. So that's why I'm multiplying both sides by 24. Now at this point, you can distribute here. So you're going to get 24 times this first fraction, just like this, minus, and then 24 times the second fraction, equals, and then 24 times the right-hand side. All right, now at this point, you're going to reduce. The whole point of multiplying by the LCD is to get these denominators to be factors of 1s. Hence the idea of clearing the fractions. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, 24 divided by 3 is 8. All right, over here, 8 divided by 8 is 1, 24 divided by 8 is 3. Over here, 6 divided by 6 is 1, 24 divided by 6 is 4. Now be careful with the next step. So remember, you're saying 8 times this numerator. This numerator has more than one term. So let's put that in parentheses. You're going to say 8 times 2x plus 5. Minus, and then over here the same thing, 3 times 3x minus 2, just like this. Equal, and over here that's going to be 4, and that's just x, so 4 times x is 4x. All right, so that's what I have. Now let's go ahead and get rid of the parentheses using distributive property. And so I get 8 times 2x is 16x, 8 times 5 is 40, a negative 3 times 3x is a negative 9x, and a negative 3 times a negative 2 is a positive 6, equal 4x. Let's combine like terms. 16x minus 9x is going to give me 7x. 40 and a positive 6 is 46, equal 4x. Now this time, I'm just going to go ahead and bring the variables to the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 7x to both sides. And when I do that and I combine like terms, this is 0. And so I get 0 plus 46 is 46, equal. And then 4x and a negative 7x is a negative 3x. And then the next step is to go ahead and get the variable x by itself. So right now I'm multiplying by negative 3. The opposite is to divide by negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. 1 times x is x. And so I get x to be negative 46 divided by 3. And then if you can reduce, make sure you reduce, but you cannot reduce. But if you want to, since this is an improper fraction, you can write as a mixed number. And so as a mixed number, that would be negative 15 1/3. Now, let me just kind of mention what some students will do, and you got to be careful with this. So some students at this point will say this. They'll say, well, right here, they'll say, well, that is going to be equal to negative 15.3. That's not true. All right, so this negative 15 1/3 or negative 46 over 3 is not negative 15.3. Remember, if you use your calculator, and that's probably what you're doing when you do this. You're saying 46 divided by 3 and you get this. But see, that's not 15.3. Remember, this right here is a rational number. What this is approximately equal to negative 15.3, but don't say it's equal to. In fact, with these problems, if the original problem did not have any decimals, don't write your answer as decimals. Leave them as fractions or mixed numbers. All right. So remember, this is 15 1/3. All right. So you got to be careful. 15 1/3. That's what that is. And 15 1/3 does not equal this. It's approximately equal to this. Okay. So don't write these as decimals. Leave your answer as fractions or mixed numbers. All right. So that's going to take care of the key to this worksheet.